This is Deb Helfrich, hashtag redheaded She-Hulk. We had the obvious technical difficulties, but I'm going to treat you to a lecture on well-being philosophy. It's November 18th, 2020, and it's a failing civilization. Someone needs to teach her life-centric thinking, and that's going to be me. Now, get comfortable in here, because I really am looking to do a 90-minute improv. We'll see how this goes. And maybe somebody will show up in the chat. I shared it on LinkedIn, which means nobody will see it until next week. And what I want to talk about today is that our last actual president, Barack Obama, released his book, and there's a great article in The Atlantic. And our president, let's be clear, we haven't had one since, used the word epistemology, making philosophy, having people go out and understand that there is actual thought about how we think, that there are lots and lots of relatively useless texts about all this stuff. Now, philosophy used to be something that happened in academia, only basically white men who had an income managed to stick around, get their works published. But let me tell you something, when the feminine aspect of the universe starts to look at things, impactful thinking comes from using the tools of philosophy. This is basically finding valid premises and building syllogisms and corollaries and such like that. So what happens is you're going to think much more broadly than normal. We have this concept that science and math equals reality, and I'm here to tell you it's not the truth. They're tools. Well, math is a tool and science is theories. At some point, the theories do coalesce into widely established facts. But there's always a point when science can be evolutionized. You see, it really is a theory. Science says, is not God. We've sort of switched this concept out of the law of God, now the law of science. And laws themselves. I mean, our Constitution said some heinous things. 3/5. The A of well-being philosophy is anti-racism. A is for anti-racism. In a life-centric philosophy that uses evolutionary logic, this is entirely the most foundational aspect. If we are going to fix this world, we're going to make it through this chaos without self-extincting in 30 years. The situation is bad, y'all. You are dived deep into the swim lane of your life. But looking at this broadly from a philosophical perspective, when you're talking about climate degradation, whether you're talking about natural ecosystems degradation, massive species extinctions, we may not have amphibians anymore. There will not be fish in the ocean by 2050. The World Health Organization states unequivocally that by 2025, 50% of the world's population will be in water-stressed regions. You don't think that's going to create war, mayhem? You don't think the elite are going to start building themselves moats, kicking people off of entire islands? It comes to this. We are one species, Homo sapiens sapiens. Our attention spans are so small. I barely give you 5. I think y'all maybe got 4-second attention spans, especially if you live on them dumb phones. That is killing the mental capacity of our species. The speed of it all, the just get through it all of itness, the smallness of the screen. Get right. Ulysses on a screen like that. I went through a number of things. I don't know, War and Peace came up first because I'm in this hashtag redheaded She-Hulk mood. I never read it. And then I got stuck in Russian stuff, which didn't apply. And then I wanted to say Madame Bovary. Because in a real sense, if you're familiar with Flaubert, Madame Bovary speaks to what's going on here. You haven't read it, in a nutshell, I think she was really deprived, like in a nunnery sort of a childhood. And that can be, whether specifically or in our own environments, we're as an American society, not in any specific way. When we look at rearing children in an American society, our kids are not being afforded the attention they require because we're off-familying their care, because our employers respond, you must get back to work in like an unconscionably small amount of weeks. And then women get the whole must compete bug. So Madame Bovary somehow found a doctor, had plenty of money, was unhappy because it didn't match any of the romance novels, web streaming series. And so she shopped and shopped and shopped. Life didn't look like what, in her case, she'd read, and in my case, but in many of especially now, the lives, we're looking at these screens and they're having far more impact than you will ever really be ready to consciously see. I've been a hermit for a decade. I was neglected as a child in my community of origin. There was nobody who was so philosophically oriented as I was. And screens have an impact. Now, if you're not consciously sort of looking for friends, as I was, it's probably overall a negative impact. I know that how I transduce screens, the interesting thing is, the actors that I admire are people who I've somehow gotten a glimpse of beyond the characters they portray. And I think most times they get locked into these characterizations. And for me, absolutely, one of the most attractive man I think on the planet, Morris Chestnut. I don't really have any data about him as a person, so it's sort of interesting. I just, would love to have a chat with him, but I don't know what we would chat about. Whereas there's so many other people who I identify with as people who I would like to have some sort of chat like this, a rambling going on and going on. So come all the way, always responding back to anti-racism. What I truly believe we need to see a lot more of is intellectual discussions showcasing Black intelligence. Love to have a conversation with anybody, anytime. Where we can really dive into that, where I'm never going to get defensive. I'm never going to say some of these heinous things. I don't know. I can't explain white people. Not really. I mean, I have enough experience code switching in my own way to begin to sort of philosophically go, well, what has to contribute to this as a categorization? It's all fear. And it is economically generated fear. It is financial madness. Because the 40-hour work week, even if you have relatively enough money, okay? Which is the assertion that seems to really bug them, but it's true. White people have the privilege and have a much easier time establishing stability. But within that stability is this hustle, 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 buy this, buy this, buy this. Okay, now you actually have to, like, to be an actual person in America, you've got to be paying monthly fees to like 88 different cloud apps. Your fee for this, your fee for that. And I'm overwhelmed with it, and I've never downloaded an app. So telling you the inability to think intellectually, the what we saw of these delusional people who are playing this I don't know what the word is for what this 45th asshole is doing to the country. It's definitely medieval. It's definitely not from the democracy playbook. It is definitely real mental instability. Which I can understand to a certain degree in order to explain it. Insofar as I'm ignoring the robocalls of predators. Fearless and vulnerable, my speciality. Now, I'm doing it understanding the consequences. I'm not avoiding an entire nation. I'm avoiding a robotic machine programmed to phone every work hour of the week. This is unsettling to somebody who is struggling to stay alive financially. So what has to happen is truly that we figure out how to build a world where people aren't under so much unrelenting stress about the financial world. It's really actually very simple to do. It's something that it simply takes new levels of thinking. And while I might appear to be rambling, I like that to be part of this act. I love that I just saw it too and it disappeared. Now, I think mostly these are bots that find me. I don't think real people, but it could be. Maybe some philosophy buffs on the YouTuber. But mostly what I think is going on is that we've become numb from it's the 40-hour work week. It's the grind of using most of your mental power to put money in the coffers of a corporation that will lay you off in a minute or fire you in a second. Forget about cause. Most employment is at will these days. Lawyers dream these things up, and then all of a sudden, I mean, you have to jump through every hoop. You have to have your background investigated. You have to have all of this set and that set. 12 interviews, and you can show up and they can be like, you're too loud. You're too complex. You're not pretty enough. It's time to stop having this, y'all. Ultimately, we need to get away from an economy that requires everyone to work. But since we're operating in one right now, the world of work has to accommodate. You cannot make people feel like they're going to commit suicide. And nobody's really reporting on the societal financial impact of COVID to the extent they need to. When you're poor, when you're working from minimum or a wage less than your locale supports the freedom to have your own. I mean, again, have your own apartment. You can't buy a house unless you're making many multiples over a minimum wage. Isn't that supposed to be what every American is entitled to? Shelter. I use the word entitled, and I know that there were all of this sort of public outbursts of knee-jerk, you ain't entitled to anything. Of course we should be. What kind of a crazy ass thing is that to go around? No one's entitled to anything. The world won't give you anything. The purpose of human civilization is to make that framework to make life easier for humans. I'd say it's a failing civilization, and someone needs to furnish her with life-centric thinking. But all right. ABC is a well-being philosophy. A is for anti-racism, which goes immediately into economics and reparations needed, and building a fully equitable society, not just in the US of hypocrisy, but in every nation. I think we're past the point when nations really make any sense. If we'd stop having this concept of nations, we'd stop going to war. We'd start these whole, the EU, and now I hear Asia's got their own trading block. There's goods and bads to this, because in the current system, the need for that shows the only key to success is hugeness, billions. It makes individuals completely invisible. So we've got to really figure out how we want to have a civilization working. We just keep pivoting a little bit from this where we're at now, which is complexity that few really can understand. People are taught and trained to become experts. So this one little slice vertical, the world is like a barcode, and this. That is a big problem. The world is a barcode, and we've now got all humans who know they're vertical. We're all these verticals. Where's the synthesis? Where's the integration? Where's somebody who sees broadly that we're talking about the world as a barcode? That's the B of well-being philosophy, bioelectricity. Barcode and what it represents is really about the fact that everything is frequency. The density of those lines, and the barcode is a visual representation of frequency. Because what happens is you go up in hertz. 1 hertz is one wave, then 2, 3. So as you go up into intensity of hertz, let's say audible sound stops at about 20,000 hertz. That looks like a barcode. The waves become much more rigid. The angles are much there. It's all very steep. And everyone becomes their own frequency, and nobody resonates with anybody else. That creates a hyper-individualized world where these forces that want to sequester a lot of wealth and power can simply just do it. There's not enough of the collaborative collective paying attention or understanding the moves that got this completely incompetent human being in charge of what used to be a nation relied on for her stability and I don't know. It was all just self-PR. It's hard to say. What I mean by stability is the U.S. dollar is the peg of global currency. So what happens is that we get alike. And so really interesting that in learning about blockchain and Bitcoin and things like that, it's all about scarcity. And again, while this trading block seems to be about abundance, what happens is then you have to say, well, here's the people in that bubble and all the rest of y'all pay more. As I said, at a human level, people become irrelevant. I think we need to stop having these global supply chains. So at the localization, like China should be making their own stuff, and we should be coming back to making more of our own stuff. The crucial stuff. And go away from this model of single-use plastics and throwing things away and needing all of this plastic to house a little bit of coffee when you used to could just get a bag and some filters. Paper that really will disintegrate. And is that pod coffee even all that good? I'm not buying it. Once in an Airbnb, and I'm like, all right, this don't work. So let's digress for a minute into what I'm doing in this lecture. Stream of consciousness. So typically what we think about is somebody, okay, I got some notes and got a topic and I'm trying to pull together some information so you can take a quiz on it. This will be part of the midterm. I'm trying to give you the information I want you to cover when you write a paper. It's a very static model of education. It's based on what we already knew completely. You're supposed to think some things, you're supposed to add in a little bit of your own toppings. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's be clear. And that forms a foundation of getting, freshly baked humans up to speed. But we don't do enough of allowing the creative, life-centric thinking to get its day in entertainment, in the media, in daily life. So stream of consciousness is literally whatever crosses my mind, I'm thrilled to share. This takes somebody who's really come to grips with who they are, is certain that their motives are good, and wants to say, these big concepts in the world have to be personified. If you are a person who cares about clean water, and we should, again, I said 50% water-stressed regions. See, things will keep popping up. I have themes. They're complex, and I come at them from a way that's unexpected, but I have a number of basic themes that come up. Water is necessary for life. Now, life emerges when there's an appropriately hydrated condition. Single cell amoeba up to us, water is crucial. It's crucial for all of the plants. It's crucial for every single animal. We seem to forget this, right? When we say 50% of humans are in water-stressed regions, what we must mean is 50% of life on Earth. Due to man-made conditions. Because the whole point of life up until the airplane, which this has been in the 1900s, and there was the railroad, which was no earlier than the mid-1800s. So then there were ocean sailing ships, which we can put to the mid-1400s, when racism started, as a twin of capitalism. In fact, there wouldn't really be capitalism if it weren't for racism. Do think about that for a second. I might make a note here. What is this, 29 minutes in? There would be no capitalism without racism. We're talking philosophically, we're analyzing this at a deep level. But would this economic model of a broad pool of labor And some people who can just make ever escalating wealth that they sequester within their own family, within their own company, within their own corporation, without forcing other humans to labor for free. It wouldn't have happened. Right now, we can convince people to labor for $15 an hour, which is a type of paychecked servitude, at the very least. And it truly is the case that the model of capitalism is inhumane. And in the early days, what was the fulcrum that would let some of these people become owners, managers? We use the plantation metaphor. It really applies. That model consists to this very day. When, again, you have to have your background checked, you have to take a drug test. The whole freaking country is overweight, suffering from mental health. Everyone is taking, but man-made drugs, pharmaceutical drugs are okay. But plant-based drugs aren't drugs. Let me be clear. Drugs, as an underlying basic definition, have to be man-made, chemically. And that comes with all kinds of manufacturing byproducts, that comes with preservatives, it comes with adjuvants, things like that. Adjuvants, that's a word I'm seen but never heard said, and now I can't even see it. The mercury in the vaccine situation, which basically, seriously, you don't understand what that is, and some of this controversy about vaccines. This is an ingredient that is known to depress your immune system. So not just that you're giving yourself a dose of measles, okay? That's the theory. That's the theory that we're all sort of talking about. Is, go ahead and expose yourself to a controllable amount of measles, so that your body knows how to fight it when you're well, so that if you start getting it and it's a virulent case in somebody else's system and it's passed along, your system's already got that. But at a certain point, this principle also started to be, well, and this would have been data that it didn't work out well. The reason any company would go to the money to spend to put in a mercury or a thimerosal or some of these other things is because they need the efficacy in their own trials showed that just plain old giving this optimized dose of the measles wasn't all that protective. Statistically, maybe, but not. So they come back in and they make some more. So let's decrease your immune system. Let's have it deal with this thing and then also give you the measles. That'll really make sure your system is fully aware. So I am not a fan of over-vaccination. I'm not entirely sure that we anymore can think about this clearly. It's a crucial place. So we're in the B for bioelectricity, okay? We've already established anti-racism and becoming one species is really important. Now, in the bioelectricity umbrella, we're talking about vaccinations. So, what might not be clear that I'm proceeding logically, but with feminine, holistic, organic logic, very circular in nature, very encompassing. This is yesterday listening to a podcast by another philosopher. The left brain, right brain, the yin and yang kind of concept is bioelectricity. And the masculine principle, the left brain, thinks very linearly. And this is how most lectures I attended proceeded in what you might be expecting from a deep dive into well-being philosophy. I'm saying that is static, that typically it relies only on precedent, and it may seem to have some place for your opinions, but in general, your opinions will be judged on how well you understood precedent. We don't create a better world by mimicking the chaos. But we have to understand the chaos in an entirely different way that points to better. So the chaos of vaccines is over-vaccination. It's this point that you're going and to save money is this managed care. Doctors want to bring you back in for vaccines on a regular basis, but not too many times because they can make more money doing other things. It's all commercialized. So vaccines are made by different companies, are they not? And vaccines are profit-generating products, are they not? Proprietary, like trade secret. So if you're going and giving your child a vaccine, 3 vaccines at once, and that's my experience from my dog, they want to bundle things together. But if they're separate shots, they've all got their separate amounts of preservatives and all of these things that maybe you only need that one dose, which is how it is. So if you're getting a vaccine from a Pfizer and this company and that company, these companies are not checking interoperability because it's trade secrets. Back in this silo, does the Pfizer one work? Does the Roche one work? Whose job is it to make sure that the overlap of these two is because they're only putting in as much of these additives that are in question, and there's a number of them, and I don't want to go into the controversy of any specific thing. I'm saying that the category of adding in more than just attenuated measles. There's always a cost-benefit analysis by the company. So they're putting in as much as needed to get the results so that people keep paying for their vaccine versus the competitors. I mean, again, do they compete on vaccines? I don't know. I don't really care. If at any given short amount of time you're taking multiple products that have something to deplete your immune system, and they're coming from separate vendors, you're getting that at the same time. You're taking 3 vaccines with 3 adequate doses to suppress your immune system might not just completely knock that thing out. It's 3 times what has been assessed from the data to be needed. But you don't get less of that. You'll pull it out. Interoperability is why I am anti-vaccine. I'm also very pro-choice in this situation because you have to be optimally healthy in order for a vaccine to not really cause a severe assault to your body. It's meant to be just enough of an assault to stop you from problems. But I'm not really like, there should be a checklist, a 20-point checklist. For my dog to get on a plane, there's like a 57-point checklist. Should there not be a checklist to say that you're all right for a vaccine? Have you recently had fevers? What's your mouth situation? That's a big one. Again, I am on day 13 of fasting. 7 days has been the longest I've ever went. And that 7 days felt so energizing. And I said, well, let's keep going. And let's not just keep going just a little bit. I think I was going for 10. I'll be honest. I think maybe I said, okay, 10. But by 10, I'm like 15. I think right at the 7, I might have said 15 anyway. Fasting is free. Do not pay anyone for their little magical schedules. You're going to come up with your own schedule. I'll give you some philosophical logic to help you trust your own body. Now, you're going to have some sort of level of intention and attention to not just the structure of the schedule, but to your body state. Fasting is about optimizing your homeodynamic balance. It's about taking out the very expensive metabolic process of digesting food. And it's not just about generating the energy to power yourself. It's also about, most of your immune system is in your digestive tract. What that means is we have what's called an enteric lining. This is the all of the surfaces from your lips down through your final destination. This is a border like our skin, and it is much more permeable, and our skin, doesn't really let much in. Light, yes, but for the most part, unless we're scratched, cut, whatever, our skin, it can absorb things. So when they're right there, but for the most part, it is an impermeable barrier in the way we think of stuff. Internally, our intestinal tract is about absorbing nutrients while identifying bacteria and pathogens of all kinds. Again, rotten food, foraging and tasting some brand new berry that turns out to be poisonous. Life was so much more about the variability of things before civilization arose. Agriculture tied us to one field. Then villages cropped up around where there was a constant set of food, and then trading occurred. And then villages aggregated into cities. So then there was more of the ships and the trading and the moving around more, and we got the wheel thing. I don't know when that would have been. Then came industrialization. And industrialization truly took away a vast intelligence in our body. We started pruning the neurons of sensing other animals, of the forest, of data floating around as far as scent. We started pruning that because we sat in schools and we sit in cubicles and we sit in cars. And we got these senses of, electronics and notifications and such and so forth. These things happen at machine rates, not at the natural world rates. The intensity, alarm clocks are just torture devices. Really. And why we have that torture device is no matter how your own body clock is, or no matter how close to sick you might be, that if you could just stay in bed, your body'd fight it off. Got to go clock in on the time clock. Clocking in on this general societal time clock is really a problem. We've got archetypes. This is far beyond just something simple like the lark and the night owl situation. It would have been, in hunter-gatherer times, it would have been optimal for evolution to have a number of different people working in a number of different shifts. This might be based on, when you were born and your clock starts. Think about that, y'all. I was born at 1 a.m., 1:07 a.m. Might that really not have when my clock started? So, is that in some way, shape, or form a preference to being wide awake? When I, throughout high school and college, I worked the late shift. Typically, I work 5 hours, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. at the library. That's how I got smart. Degree in philosophy. Working at the library. Okie dokie. This has been fun. Work. The heinousness of work, the legacy of how capitalism has created this vast working class who are really underpaid for their life force, then a sort of level of knowledge workers who got plenty, but all of their brain power is being sequestered into this one thing that they do repetitively, always assess to get better at it. Humans are homeodynamic creatures, and our brain wants to think new thoughts. It does not. I mean, there's the chunking aspect of making something subconscious. So there's a lot of use in something like knowing the route to your job and doing it subconsciously. So that you free up here, you could be, again, planning a vacation or creating your novel or thinking about, well, what if I could direct a movie? You should be playing with your life, playing with these things that you want to accomplish. But most of us are stuck in he said and she said, and how do I deal with my boss? And our brains have been co-opted by our culture, our society, all the people around us. Our brains never really get to focus on who should we be. Let me tell you, I have suffered severe personal harm trying to simply be able to express this gift I have for real complex thinking. It arose precisely to be the antidote to 2020. But in everyone's minds, there's so much time poverty that listening to somebody rant like this is not ramble. I'm gonna pull some attention and some intention here. And ranting to me is a positive thing, and it has different connotations to most people. So I will use that in. I was gonna just switch to ramble, but since we're actually pulling focus, it is a Socratic monologue. I'm here to teach, but not so much explicitly. You know what I'm saying? Back to this, we've got lectures. I'm here to teach a methodology of thinking. I think in your brain you have the capacity to be your own spokesperson in a similar way. Your topics will be different. Your choice of words might be a lot more jokey, or you might be very serious. You might be a lot more pondering. You might choose your words. I'm clearly just going with what shows up and going, I didn't see that coming, but okay, let's go there. Oh yeah, and this is under the topic of that. Bioelectricity in the switch from B to C is the terrain that we're in right now. I just did a little, instead of inner critic, I heard somebody somewhere interpreting the word rant in a different way than I meant it. So I pulled focus and I came into all of my organizing intelligence, everything that's going on. We don't want to use the word rant anymore in lectures. There's nothing really, a little bit of hashtag redheaded She-Hulk. I'm clearly upset at the state of the world when it can be different. And it will become different not when we trust leaders implicitly, not when we go, this party is, no, nothing changes until we change as individuals. This is a collective problem. This is a collective deadening of our attention span, of our capacity for logical reasoning, of a capacity to see our own best interests as staying alive, and that in the joy of staying alive, you want others to stay alive. If you're really in love with your own life, you certainly don't go around harming others. You're too busy. And that's the difference between avoiding because something is wrong in the external world. As I avoided cigarette smoke, I avoid dealing with robocalls. Because I'm so busy doing this for y'all. And mostly for myself at this point, since I have no capacity to figure out how to attract an audience. It seems full of lack of integrity. And there's constant bullying by people who manage to do it, who say, it's free, just do it. They have not come and looked at what is life for me. And I'm not soundbiteable. We just passed. We're nearly at 60. So we're going to do the full 90, I'm certain. And I'll never have time again. I'll never have time to come back in here. But maybe we'll get my documentarian. Who knows if this will ever get seen again. This feels more like an exercise it's a practice exercise. It really is. So I was going to say, well, let's just make myself happy. And I was going to say we can go do some research on how does the fat from here get burned as calories? Just go into the bloodstream. It definitely is coming from my extremities down to the midsection. And the midsection is where the organs are. So I'd assume the organs. There's blood in circulation. So how does it get coordinated? Well, take this molecule from here and this molecule from here and move up some ankle stuff. The process flow of burning fat, it's a horizon that it took me a long time to even think about. And I'm optimized for thinking and thinking very circularly. So there's always some different way to look at things. And it can be complex, but it doesn't need to be. So the B into the C, A is for anti-racism, B is for bioelectricity, which is taking the philosophy of making sure that humans just fit into all of the science of the universe. And what that means for our bodies is that bioelectricity is the force that explains everything. Taking that bioelectricity and understanding us in terms of we're part of the solar system and we're part of nature and everything has come through evolution using evolutionary logic. So again, when I would talk about racism and capitalism, which have to be demolished, both of them, in a very unified way. It'll just be another kind of ism. If we just demolish racism by itself, and genderism, let's say, and prejudice against sexual preferences, ableism, classism will arise, or statism, as in, the red and blue concepts, or those kinds of things. If we don't really fix the economic fear, there will always be something new. Very clear, going to be soon, digitally. Oh, look at all these blooming apps. I don't know how to dive into the complexity of apps. We're getting to the sea, it's this border of things are getting done because technology allows it to be done versus, and we'll make it cheap enough so people just pay it and then they'll forget and we'll just get $10 from them every month. We just need to get a number of people to give us $10 a month. So that ties into this constant popularity. So something that costs $1,000 but is really useful because it took much more R&D just simply stops being possible. Everyone's funding app after app, just femtech now. Fintech. Look, Fin has been teched since the 80s. The reason, for me, the tipping point that has created elitist capitalism in ways that are barbaric, allow this zook. I'm really spending my time now on not being okay with Facebook. They co-opted this capacity for any human across the globe to talk to each other. It's priceless. It can't be exploited in the way just to make this one guy. The exploitation and the selling of democracy to anybody who can pay for an ad. The way that it's supposed to be this forum for people. But from the very beginning, that's why I never why would I create an account to be marketed to? It's a market. You're under the guise of being confused about what's going on. You're selling your life force to be marketed at. And you're selling off your friends too. And you're selling off all of your intellectual property for free. Posting for free, podcasting for free, everything for free. It's gotten ludicrous. While just a few people make extraordinary wealth off the exponential aspects of tech. It's happened in Wall Street in the 80s. And I worked for the database company Sybase, and Sybase underpinned Wall Street from the early days. This database and what databases allow and what the speed of processing and then ever cheapening servers, and then especially in the realm of numbers. It took a long time for us to figure out how to get exponential, consumer, but in the realm of numbers, because programming is all just zeros and ones. So I remember myself going to a programming class at Kent State University when I was in 8th grade. Because I got the TRS 80 for Christmas in 7th grade. So 7th or 8th grade. Learning about arrays and things like that. I am so far from a tech Luddite that I'm here to tell you I understand it. I understand its goodness, and I understand it has been corrupted by the economic system. So what the whole crowdsourcing is about. So the cloud and all of the cloud apps, it's this lowest common denominator, like $10 lowest common. It's like penny candy. It's not good for you in bulk. I mean, a piece here and there, right, for the flavor. You know, a little tiny pack to last you all week. But when you start having when you start requiring penny candy to get through the hour or the day, it's a very unsustainable thing for a species like humans. C is for consciousness made easy. Clarity about consciousness. Consciousness is human life force. We won't dive down into it any more scientifically. I can get real physics about it. Mechanical physics and quantum physics both come into play to explaining how consciousness is an easy problem. All of the rest of my philosophical tribe consider consciousness the hard problem. Can't even define it. Well, not being able to define consciousness is a limitation of languaging. Because we experience it. There is nothing more intimately true to you than your own consciousness. Needing God, needing meaning, needing some person with a PhD behind their name to explain it is been taught to us in the let's have you become in paycheck servants. Our whole education, and this has been for quite some time, is basically been to take wild human youth and civilize them, standardize them, make them able to live in a civilization where they follow the rules. There's this thing that if you're not a rule follower, you're a rule breaker, which is lawlessness. There's a lot of room in there. You can creatively maneuver and do things really interesting within systems and show your creativity. How did I end up right here, right now? Certain that my stream of consciousness is worth recording. Happy if I've gotten an actual like, but I bet it was a bot. I bet I was on long enough just to go to some hot girl's website. But maybe somebody from LinkedIn popped over and gave me a like. In any case, I am satisfied at this work. I think good things have occurred. This stream of consciousness has tied together for me really well. I brought in a lot of topics. I went from the 1400s up. I went here, there, and everywhere. In order to really not self-extinct our species, we have to evolve. We have to evolve. Coronavirus, so we've needed to for quite some time. The world's built for people who enforced the status quo, so it was a constant struggle. Now, the forces that are saying nothing's really changed are on the wrong side of history. To evolve, we need to learn to think differently. It's insanity to keep doing what you are doing and expect a different result. How we think differently to not be insane today is life-centric thinking. Life-centric thinking means do no harm to any molecule of life. If you're a human being, that means I need to start you out by explaining anti-racism. All Homo sapiens are one species, and my safety is dependent upon the safety of all the very necessary Black lives. If you don't see yourself intertwined in that way, you are part of the problem. You do not understand that you are African ancestrally. You're part of the problem. If you understand that, but you feel awkward saying it, you're part of the problem. Bioelectricity is about learning. We have chemistry and biochemistry. We should also have electricity and bioelectricity. Bioelectricity, chemistry talks about all of the digestion, all of the chemical processes happening in our body. Bioelectricity talks about the electrical processes, which is our heart pumping and our brain generating thoughts. And making that very clear that that goes by the standard principles of basic science. Basic electricity explains how human bodies work in a way that I don't understand is so controversial. Bioelectricity explains African, Eastern, and Western approaches to healthcare and unites them. The African is more thinking, and again, ancestrally, thinking about when we were all humans on the continent of Africa. What do we do to stay well? Why don't we know about that theory as we know about the Indian traditions of yoga and Ayurveda? We know about the Chinese traditions of acupuncture and Tai Chi. We know about the different religions of these regions. Why don't we know about what happened ancestrally in Africa? First off, the heinousness of the white man colonization that happened from the mid-1400s until, basically the last 50, 40, 30 years. Most African nations, Nigeria just celebrated 60. Most would be about that. Apartheid ended in 94-ish. Take what day you want to. When Mandela was released from Robin, or took the presidency, some. There's a few different points, but that's 25 years. We've all have the ability to hear about Trevor Noah's childhood. I truly, truly believe that the traditions of Africa, which I will call basic human maintenance, when we were an earlier species and we were tribal, absolutely. But within those tribes, we were collaborative and everyone belonged. And there were rituals to go from childhood to adulthood. And there were gatherings, probably nightly, probably religiously, where we would dance and sing together. Dancing and singing, you'll find some of my YouTube videos, it's how I got my health back. Both in the practice and in the output. And in just watching that as I've healed, I just get more and more capacity to sing and dance. As I'm optimizing my body, as I'm becoming leaner, as everything resets away from morbid obesity into being the lean human that belongs under here, I can sing and dance better. Singing and dancing employs bioelectricity, both through the piezoelectricity of the dance movements and what that does and how the energy gets generated when you move freely, unconsciously, subconsciously. When your movement ties to what you're thinking. It's called embodied cognition. We have a lot of senses. We sense so many things. And that intelligence can lead to really great output. All of the ways I use my hands. And mostly in this lecture, I've not brought up what's going on. But watching me without the sound, sped up, I think would be interesting. That's bioelectricity. That was just, it was a surge of joy and energy, and I just did it in my hands. That is absent from our culture, or we see people as strange when, let's start. Doesn't belong in a cubicle. It's a sort of, you sit there, you do your job, put on your headsets, be numb, be a zombie. But really, and along with the singing and dancing is shamanism, which is, life coaching. Let's be real. Finding a right mate, wanting to do a different profession than your family's livelihood, healing from this, that, or the other thing. But it was, really, here's some wisdom. I know some things. I'm in tune with the natural world around us. I'm in tune with a lot of the dynamics of the community, so I can give you wise advice. Wise advice is also a philosopher's specialty. So Socratic monologue. You really should pat yourself on the back if you actually end up listening to this. I'm really proud of doing it. I think I'll do this until I can't every Wednesday, knowing that it's live, I can't take it back. I could just delete it or make it not public and things, but I am very pleased. Ever so slightly rambling, but not. The ABCs of well-being philosophy. Well-being philosophy's goal is to have clear, anti-racist, life-centric thinking become a necessary global good. Each one of us has the power to pivot this civilization. We're all now experts and professionals. We all now have all this expertise. We all now do all these specialized things. Within that arena of everyone's speciality If people start thinking in life-centric ways, we'll create a better world. And the way to define life-centric thinking is simply to invoke a really standard phrase, and a phrase that I'd like to see required in every corporate charter. If an entity wants the ability to have the process of making billions of dollars, if it wants to affect human life force, it must state up front, first, do no harm to any nugget of life. This means the ecosystem, don't pollute upstream from a community, figure out your carbon sustainability, don't just build headquarters willy-nilly, don't make people come into offices because you think that they're lazy bums, don't keep doing things that treat employees like widgets. There's a lot of triggering terms there because workers are really exploited. Employees are really exploited. Even software engineers making $150,000 a year are quite exploited. We're all exploited. Even managers, crazy exploited. We shouldn't really need managers. Project managers, absolutely. But people managers, we should not need. Because again, these directors, right? Visionaries and VPs, and these people are exploited too. CEOs, C-suite sells their soul to shareholders. I have to constantly, instead of just saying, we've done well, let's figure out how to maintain this, how to provide a quality product to these customers. Let's keep all these customers happy. Let's listen to them. Let's not make crazy, unuseful features just because we can put out a PR notice and maybe more people will buy versus one random feature and piss off 80% of our existing customers. The 90-day earnings cycle needs to go really quickly. That is one way that we can stabilize and downgrade from this hypermania of constant short-term returns that require basically creating ever more multinationally global conglomerates just to figure out ways to keep those numbers rising. That is no way to serve an individual. It is not just large for large's sake. Nobody wins except the gamers of the system. The large institutional investors and those who somehow, some way broken into being a billionaire, who just constantly are seen as celebrities in our culture, and they're good at playing the game of capitalism, but that doesn't really mean they should be funding the future of women and girls. So that's been a lot of talking. I'm on day 13 of a fast. I'm checking in. Is there anything you don't have the answers to? Because I might have complexly went off topic that was on point. Off topic can be on point. This is some of the complexity of how we're all entirely identical, yet we're utterly unique. The methodology behind my madness is really very clear. It is challenging the complexity of world evolvers to be able to look at things that they've never really had to look at, that they've taken for granted. The world works like this, and give you a wide range of things showing the world isn't as static and as limited and as fixed as we've been instructed to believe, so that those who are winning the system keep winning. So first, do no harm to any nugget of life is life-centric thinking. Pardon me. That catchphrase came from How to Fix Corporations, but it's also the way that every single one of us can go about would coughing make you anxious? Do you feel ashamed for having flubbed? Do you apologize and apologize? Do you start to go, okay, body, I'm listening to you. We'll be out of here in 90 minutes flat. Or do we want to see, does a drink of water? You see what I'm doing here? And there's more different spaces in my house. I don't water fast. I do a 23-46, since everyone kept asking me for a schedule. And so I fast for 23 hours and 3/4. I have a small meal of raw cacao mousse and pecans. And then I don't eat until the next day at the same time. So I have a 10 to 15 minute eating window in the parlance of the fasting community, which happened, I guess, 2.5 hours ago now. And that was probably the end of the lubrication into the transition of I'm quite happy to be silent. I spent most of my life being silent. And there were a lot of options there on what I might take through, and I was simply saying, well, what tangent can I go down for this last minute or so? And I think the answer is the ABCs of well-being philosophy are anti-racism, bioelectricity, and consciousness made easy. And the Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, I's, are the math of life. 1 + 1 = 3. Evolutionary logic, which is easily explained by the fact that there is an obviously correct answer to the chicken versus egg dilemma. And then U cubed. Body, mind, and then we have is it soul, is it spirit? Well, in well-being philosophy, that third S is even more powerful. Its surroundings and much of our chronic disease burden, I can back and forth and reverse engineer pretty much most chronic conditions, especially those that do not really have reliable answers. It's a nervous system derangement. There's only so much processing power in a human body. And as chronic disease, as you become more and more unwell, you lose your processing power. And in losing your processing power, your nervous system starts to go, well, we got to pay more attention to what's going on around us. You're not optimal. And then the world is so toxic and poisoned, again, first do no harm to any nugget of life. Chemical scents are poisoning us to death. And we're paying for that shit. Combustion, the byproducts of combustion, the excess carbon. Excess carbon is not just up in the atmosphere, like so far away we can't conceive of it. There's pollution right here in the air I'm going to breathe in the next 90 seconds. I go near a dryer sheet. Every alarm bell in this whole complex goes off. It's evacuate. It is fight, flight, and freeze all combined. Hightail it somewhere else. Start cussing up redheaded She-Hulk style. And then I lose the capacity to think. I literally, just the smallest whiff of a dryer sheet creates a cascade of metabolic energy needs that can essentially leave me unable to accomplish something for the next 3 days. This has been Deb Helfrich talking about the complexity of life in 2020 and how philosophical, life-centric thinking, #wellbeing philosophy can truly help you think your way past the chaos of 2020. Have a good day.